as I'm telling this story to my grandson. It's hard for you to imagine, or young people to imagine today, what people felt after Pearl Harbor when the Japanese attacked in Hawaii and the war was declared against Germany and Japan. Almost all of the young people wanted to get into the military, which is unheard of today. There's a lot to do, but not the majority of the people. I had my first airplane ride and was in 1938, shortly after my family had moved to California, at the Los Angeles Municipal Airport. And the reason I had that flight is because I took my bicycle to get repaired at a bicycle shop, and on the wall of the bicycle shop were some coupons that if you would take to the airport with your parents for a flight over Los Angeles, the child could ride free. So I took one of the coupons, rode my bicycle down to the airport, and found this couple that were going up for a flight, and I said, would you be my parents?
Get out!
So I can get a aircraft flight. And they agreed, and we flew for about an hour all over that part of Los Angeles. And that was the first time I'd been in an airplane, and I loved it. And on my 18th birthday, which was the minimum age that people could enlist in the Air Force, going to the Navy at age 17, but the Air Force was 18. I joined up. I went down to the recruiting station and joined up to be an aviation cadet. And you never knew when you signed up to be an aviation cadet whether you were going to be you knew you were going to be an officer, you were going to be through officer training, but you never knew whether you were going to be a pilot, a bombardier, or a navigator. And after basic training and a few other training, we got into the aviation cadet program. And we went to a base where they gave you a whole series of tests, mental tests to test your intelligence, all types of physical tests for your eyes and your coordination, your depth perception, and so forth. And as a result of those tests, they determined whether you were best qualified to be a pilot, a navigator, or a bombardier. And I was really equally qualified to be all three. So they gave me my choice. When I first went in, I went in with the intent of being a navigator. But since I was qualified to be a pilot, I said, what the heck, I'll give that a try. And if I wash out of pilot training, I can always go into navigation training. So I went through the aviation cadet pilot training program, and there were 3 phases. Each one of them was about 3.5 months long. Primary flight, where you flew a single engine trainer. Then you went into basic flight training, where you flew a more powerful airplane. And then you went into advanced training, where they either flew single engine fighter trainers or twin engine trainers. And I wanted to be a bomber pilot. So I went through twin engine advanced. And then after I graduated from advanced, by some quirk I was 3 or 4 weeks ahead of the rest of my class in completing all my training. So I was given a pass to go home. And the rest of the class, and it's after you graduated from pilot training, they made the selection of what your next step would be. Well, the time I got back, most of the guys had already been given their initial assignments, and majority of my class went into B-29 training. That was a big 4-engine bomber that fought in the Pacific against Japan. But I was assigned to go to B-17 transition. school to learn how to fly a B-17 at Hobbs, New Mexico. And that was about a 3-month course, learning how to fly the B-17. And after that training was over, we were sent to another air base where we had a crew assigned to us. And our crews at that time were 10 people. There was a pilot and a navigator that sat in the nose of the plane, the pilot, a bombardier and a navigator. Then there was a pilot and co-pilot, and right back of the pilot and co-pilot was a flight engineer that kept his eyes on all the instruments to make sure everything was, all the engines were functioning properly. And he also operated a top turret gun that had 250 caliber machine guns in it. Then back of the bomb bay, there was a radio operator that had a single flexible gun that he could shoot out of the top of the airplane. And behind him were 2 waist gunners that had single flexible 50 caliber machine guns. And
who was it? He had a gun shooting straight up?
well, primarily, yes.
For somebody just flying over?
Yeah, And then at the bottom of the plane, there was a ball turret gunner. He had to be a little guy because that was a very cramped quarter. And in the tail, we had a tail gunner that had a twin mounted machine gun. So there were 10 machine guns in each B-17 that we could defend ourselves against enemy air attacks. And we spent another, about 2.5 months training as a crew in Dyersburg, Tennessee. And after that crew training was over, we were sent overseas. A lot of the crews flew B-17s over to England, but I went over on the Queen Mary, my crew, and most of the people that had graduated from our crew training. And I got into England in October of 1944. And then from there we were sent to another air base in England that they made the determination what bomb group you would be assigned to. And I was fortunate enough to be assigned to the 303rd Bombardment Group, which was later named the Hells Angels after our famous B-17, which was the first B-17 to fly 25 missions in Europe. And our first, about 2.5 weeks after we arrived at our airbase at Molesworth, England, we underwent all types of really advanced training for combat, learning all the procedures that our bomb group would use. And then in very early part of November, I flew my first combat mission. And from then on, I went on to fly 36 combat missions. And at that stage of the war, in late 1944, the threat from enemy fighter attacks wasn't any near as severe as the attacks from the anti-aircraft guns, which we called flak. There would be the primary targets that we were attacking in those days. They would be surrounded, the whole city limits would be surrounded with these guns. And they would have anywhere between 500 and 600 guns around one of these targets that we're firing to at the same time. And they used their radar to determine the altitude we were flying and the courses we were flying on, and they got pretty doggone good at targeting our planes. And when you fly through one of these flak barrages, it was just one big black puff is all you saw. 600 shells exploding at the same time. And they were rapid fire guns. They could fire, probably 2 shells every minute at you. So the barrages were pretty severe. And you had to fly through that. And even to this day, you're driving down to the highway sometimes and you see the highway narrows to one because of construction, and you've got these cement barriers on either side of the highway. Well, to this day, when I drive through one of those, I get a sense of claustrophobia. just like I did when I was flying through a flak barrage. And it reminds me of that.
Really?
Yeah. And we had, I'd say the usual hard missions that most crews did. I'll tell you just a few of them. On December 24th, day before Christmas, we were flying a big mission. It was about 1,400 bombers that were put into the air, which was what's called a maximum effort. And England at that time was undergoing the worst winter they had had in over 60 years. It was cold, it was foggy, just awful. And the fog was so severe when we were taking off that you couldn't see the ends of your wings. So we had to take off by instruments, flying a heading that we knew that was on the runway. And we got off the ground all right, but while I was climbing, one of my prop shafts sheared. It was the shaft that connects the propeller to the engine. So the propeller was just windmilling, and the engine was making a heck of a lot of noise. So I knew I couldn't fly the mission, and that was probably the biggest scare I had flying combat when that happened, because we weren't sure we were going to be able to complete our takeoff. And my co-pilot that day was a fellow that was flying his first mission, and I was flying as his instructor pilot, so as a combat orientation pilot. And after we got above all the fog and stuff at about, I guess it was 9,000 or 10,000 feet, we just had to circle till we could find a place to land. And that circling was about 6.5, 7 hours till we found a hole in the fog where we could land in an airfield.
Wow.
And we finally landed, and it was an airfield that was probably 50 miles from ours. And we spent Christmas Eve just laying on benches because they didn't have barracks or beds where we could sleep. And we completely missed Christmas and our Christmas dinner. And we called the base to ask them if they could come and get us, but they said the weather is so fair that we don't want to send any trucks up there, so we started hitchhiking. And we hitchhiked till we got to another airfield that was 5 or 6 miles from our base, and then they sent a truck to get us. After everybody had finished their Christmas